In this video, we're going to have a look at some of the ways of applying the OxyExtras Carousel to products. So we have Oxygen loaded, and we also have the WooCommerce component loaded. In the first carousel that you see here, it doesn't have any auto functions, and it is pulling the products in using the repeater. In the next slide, it pulls in the products using the product list from the WooCommerce component, and you'll see that it then auto slides. The next one we have a look at, we have the central product magnifying as it scrolls, so adding focus to that specific product. And then we have another one here, which is to the left of some content, and this just looks at a single product, and as it changes, the previous product scales and fades out. So that's just some of what we'll be having a look at setting up. So to get started then, we're going to head over to Oxygen and see how to put this all together. So here we're going to have a look at the setup. So we have the OxyExtras, we have Oxygen elements for WooCommerce and WooCommerce installed. And if we head over to the OxyExtras, you'll see that we have the carousel builder enabled. And then if we head over to Oxygen, which has already been loaded, you'll see that we have the top carousel, which is using the repeater function. So as you can see, we have the carousel builder, followed by the repeater, and then the repeater components. And as for the others with the WooCommerce, you'll see that it's a much simpler setup because all we need to do is add the carousel builder and then the products list from the WooCommerce component, and then we can configure what is displayed. With the repeater, you need to do a little bit of manual work. So there we need to set up the content that appears, and in this case, we set up the feature image and the product title. So let's have a look and see how each of these was created. In the first one, and the repeater could apply, of course, to any content. So we'll add a section. We're then going to add the component from OxyExtras, which is the carousel builder. And in the carousel builder, you'll see here that you can choose the kind of content that you want to insert, and we're going to select the repeater. And then inside that repeater, we would now select the component that we would like to have showing. So here we have the carousel builder, and we've selected repeater. We're now going to go to helpers and select the repeater. There we have the repeater selected, and we'll then head over to the query, and in this case it will be a custom query, and we're going to say that the post type will be product, and we'll apply that parameter. There we have it applied. We're also going to go over to the layout component of the repeater. We're going to say that we'd like it horizontal. We're going to allow for multi-line. We will set that to equal height. We'll center the content. And then what we're going to do is add some information that we'd like to appear in the repeater. So inside that div, we will add an image. So in this case, we're going to select the feature image. In basics, we will find the feature image. So we insert the image and we'll select from the data there, and we will say featured image, and the size we will select large and insert. So there we have the featured image, and the other item that we're going to add is going to be the heading, and let's make that heading an H4, and then what we'll do is we'll double click that and insert data, and we'll say post title. We'll make it a link and we'll insert. So now we've added the individual item into our repeater. Right, so there you can see the items lining up inside the repeater. So what we'd like to do now is set the number of items that appear next to each other. So the easiest way to do that is to head over to the carousel builder and head over to cells. And what we're going to do now is in the width settings, we'll set the number of visible cells. And in this case, we'll set it to 4. And now you'll see that we'll have the 4 cells next to each other. And you'll see there's no gap between them. And what we'd like to do is add some space between. And in this case, we'll make that 20. And we'll save that. And what we're going to do is just head over to our repeater. And when we go to layout, we're going to disallow the multi-line. We'll save. And now when we go to the front end of the website, you'll see that we have duplicated the first carousel that appears on the website. All right. Now you're not seeing any content appearing in the carousel, so we're going to head over and fix that. So there you can see the items. Let's head over to the heading and make that a little bit smaller. So you can see that when it comes to doing it this way, there's a lot of additional work that has to take place in order to format and to get everything looking the way that you would like. And now I'm going to delete that carousel. So now we just have the one carousel, which is the new carousel that we've created with the repeater. And when I refresh, you will see that there is our carousel with the repeater and with the manual function scrolling through. Right, so let's head back to Oxygen. If we want to make each of those cells a link, quite easy to do. And what I prefer to do, rather than selecting the div and turning that div into a link, is just creating a new div. So we'll wrap that and we'll add a link to the image. And that link will be data, permalink, and save. So now we've added a link to the image, and we've also added a link to the individual item. We refresh that on the front, and now you'll see that you can click through to the individual product from the carousel, and it's manually activated using the arrow keys. So that's the way to do it with the repeater. Of course, it's a lot simpler if you were to do that with the product component from WooCommerce. So that's what we're going to do in the next repeater that we set up. So I'm going to head over here and create a new section. And in that section, I'm going to add the OxyExtras, and we're going to add the carousel builder. And this time what I'm going to do is in the carousel content, I'm going to choose WooComponents. Then what I'm going to do is head over to the WooComponents in WooCommerce, and I'm going to select the product list. There we go. So I've added the product list, and I'm going to save. Then I'm just going to show you what happens on the front end. So after initially saving, what you'll notice is that all we see is this inside that component, and we're not seeing the products. To fix that, it's really quite easy. What we do is we head over to our carousel, and now what we're going to do is have a look at the products list. So we choose the correct product list here in the back end, and then what I do is I go to the product query, and because it's on the home page, I'm just going to click on custom, and I'm going to hit save. And what you'll notice now is that when you do that, it now pulls through. We'll apply that parameter. You'll see now that it pulls through the products, and I haven't had to select any categories or similar to get those to show. So now it's pulling through all the products. I can head back to my carousel builder, and you can see now that it does have the add to cart functionality, the price, the name of the product, and of course the image. Now what I want to do is add some space between those cells. So I head over to cells and I go to space between, and I set the space between the cells. So you'll see now that that is a lot easier to identify the individual products. And I can go back, and now if I would like to add some automation to that carousel, I can go to behavior and I can select the transition type as slide. I can now set the time for the autoplay, so let's make that around 2000, and we can say enable autoplay after interaction, and let's keep that quite low, and let's make it infinite cells. What that means is that when it gets to the end of the number of products, instead of stopping, it will then start again with the first product. We'll hit save. We'll head over to the website, refresh, and now you'll see that that carousel that we've just created also has the auto scrolling function, and each of these dots now represents a product. What you'll also notice though is that with the different products, you have this difference in height here, which is a little bit untidy. So let's go ahead and tidy that up. So in the back end here, let's head back to the carousel. And what we want to do is we want to maybe align the cells in the center, and we want to make sure that we have equal heights on each item. And now when we refresh that, you'll see that the components now have the same height displayed all through our carousel, which makes it nice and neat. The other thing that we can do now is if we do want those components in the center, is we can head over to our product list and head over to layout and select center, and you'll see that those items are now centered. So all the other spacing and the setup that we do is done in the carousel builder. It's only the alignment within the product list that we set that up. So there we have it nicely auto scrolling as it goes through all our products and set up. Right, so what I'm going to do then is delete the preset that I made and replace that now with the one that we just created. If I just wanted sale items to appear, of course, I would go over to my products list, and in my products query, I can say on sale only, or I could select an individual category and then only have an individual category showing. So if I now go and refresh that with the sale items, you'll see that we just have the one category showing for the products, and you'll see now that only sale items appear, and the number of items here, because they are displayed individually, is now down to 6 items, and they will scroll infinitely without any stops as it goes. So there we have the products, and of course if you click on them, it links through to that particular item, or I have the functionality within WooCommerce. The next carousel to look at is going to be this one, where we add a special effect, and that just draws focus then to the product in the center. So head over back to Oxygen, and we're now going to duplicate that effect. The first thing that I'm going to do is create a new section. And inside that section, we will add the OxyExtras Carousel. And once again, we will select the component to be WooComponents. And then I'm going to head over to WooCommerce and I'm going to add the product list. So there we have added the items, and to get the products to show, we will head over to the products list. We'll go over to the product query. We will select custom, and once we've selected custom and we apply those parameters, you'll see that the products appear. We're going to repeat a couple of things here. First of all, we're going to make sure that everything is centered. So in the layout, we will select center. So our items are center aligned. Then we head over to our carousel slider, and we're going to add the spacing between the items. So inside carousel, we will go to the space between the cells, and we're going to make that 20. What we're also going to do is in the width setting, the number of visible cells, we're going to select 3. So there we have 3 cells, and the space between the cells we'll set to 20, and I'm going to apply those parameters. So there we have selected our products, and they're coming through. The next thing I'd like to do then is just start adding some of those effects. So in the cells, you'll see that we have a selected cells, a previous, and a next. So to change the size of the previous and next cells, we would head over to that particular link. And what I'm going to do now is scale the previous and the next item. So let's make that 0.7, and then the next scale, I'm also going to make that 0.7. Right, then I'm also going to change the opacity. So the previous opacity, let's change that to 0.4, and the next opacity to 0.4, and I'm going to apply those parameters. Now you're not going to see anything coming through here at the moment. What I also would like to do, well, before I do that, let's save, and let's just go and have a look at that on the front end. So you'll see now that we have created our item, but you'll see it looks like it's in reverse. We actually want that particular item to be bigger and not the two end items. And that's because when the carousel starts working, it behaves in the correct way. So in order to fix that, so that when it loads, it shows it in the correct way, what we do there is we head over to the behavior, and what we do is we set that to infinite. So the wraparound is infinite cells. And what that does is it ensures then that when it loads, that it displays correctly. So now when we load it up, you'll see now that it immediately shows correctly. Now we can add the scrolling. So the autoplay, we can set that to somewhere around 2000. That seems to be a good speed. And we'll also resume autoplay after interaction. Let's keep that number pretty small. And what we're also going to do is we'll pause autoplay on hover. That way it'll stop if somebody's interested in looking at the product, and we'll save that and give that a test. So we'll test that now. So there we have our cells moving. When I hover over, you'll see that the interaction is paused. When I move my mouse out, it waits and then it carries on. So mouse over, it stops, mouse out, and the animation continues. What I'm also going to do now is delete the previous preset that I created. So now we just have the one carousel with the 3 items, which is the one that we just created. So that shows how easy it is to create that. Of course, if I wanted to just show the products on sale, I would head over to my product query. And in this case, what I'll do, instead of sale, let me just do by category. So in my category here, I'm going to enter accessories so that only accessories show, and we'll save that. And now when I head over to the website, you'll see that only the accessories are shown. So none of the hoodies are coming through. It's only the accessories, and there are only 5 products. So that's how easy it is then to select a specific category for your slider. The next one we're going to have a look at then will be this particular slider, which you can quite easily add next to a piece of content which just displays one particular item at a time. So we head over to the back end. What I'm going to do is delete the one that I created earlier. So delete that item, and then we'll add it from fresh. So first thing to do then is head over to the OxyExtras and select the carousel builder. And once again, inside the carousel content, we're going to select the Woo components. Inside the Woo components, then we add the product list. So product list. And we also know now that when we do the product list, to make sure that the products show, we go to query and we just select custom, and all the products will show. In this case though, maybe we're just going to do the sale products because it's a select group. Scroll to the bottom, apply the parameters, and now we can see that we have our sale product showing, but not in a very nice way. So to fix that, we head back to the carousel builder, we go to cells, and in the width setting, we say set number of visible cells, and we're going to change that to 1. So we just have the 1 visible cell. And because it's such a small item, maybe what we're going to do is just get rid of some of the items there. So maybe the page dots we want to disable, and we'll just keep the arrows on the left and the right to show that there is something there. When we look at that now on the front end, you will see that we have the carousel, and if I select, it'll change. Now what we can do here is head back over to our behavior and interaction, and what I'm going to do is also select an autoplay, maybe this time a little bit less because it's just the one item. Enable after interaction, that number pretty small, and we'll scroll down to the bottom and we'll say enable autoplay on hover. And what I'm also going to do is under the carousel, I'd also like them to be equal height so that we don't have a difference in the position of the select options or add to cart. We save that. Now when I head over to the carousel, you'll see that we do have an autoplay and it'll scroll between the products. If I want to add a fade out effect, quite easy. What I do then is I head over to the individual items. So I head over to the cells and I go to previous and next. And what I want to say is that the previous cell needs to maybe scale slightly, and the opacity should be quite low. And we'll save that. Head over to the front end, hit refresh, and now you'll see that as it scrolls, the previous item fades out. But you don't see the effect so much because of the slide. So what we do then is we head back to the carousel builder, and I'm going to change the effect of the carousel. So behavior interaction, and we change the effect to fade. So now instead of it sliding out, the action becomes a fade. And now when we refresh, you'll see that the item fades out and the new product fades in. When we hover over, it pauses. When we move our mouse out, the interaction continues. And what we might want to do there is just make the autoplay a little bit longer so you have enough time to see what's being displayed. So head back, and now you'll see that fades out nicely as it goes between the products, and each one has the call to action in the same place. In the next section, we're going to create a new section and just show some of the other features that you can use when setting up your carousel. To get started on some of the other features, we're going to add a new section. And in that section then, we're going to once again head over to add the OxyExtras and add the carousel builder. In the carousel builder, once again, we're going to go to WooComponents and then head over to the WooCommerce section, add in the product list. And then in that product list, what we're going to do is then select the product query, set that to custom, and then apply those parameters, and you'll see then that the products come through. The next thing that we want to do is make sure that they're lined up nice and equally down the center. So we head over to layout in the product section, select center, and they're centered. And the next thing that we'll do then is head over to the carousel builder, and we'll set up the spacing between the cells. So we're going to the individual cells, and let's set that to 20. And if I apply the parameters now, you'll see that we have them nicely set up with a bit of space in between. Now, some of the things that you might want to have a look at here. So in the width setting, you'll see that we can set the number of visible cells, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 8, but there's no 5. So if you wanted to set up the number of items then in your carousel, let's say your 4 is great, but you would prefer to have 5, what you can then do is set the width value, and in the cell width is change the width of the cell. As you can see, if we were to make that 20%, you would then have 5 items. But with the spacing applied, it does mean that the one item edges off the edge a bit. So what we'll do then is we'll first go over to our carousel, and what we're going to do is just make that equal height. So we'll force the equal heights, and then what we're also going to do is in the behavior and interaction, we're going to make that an infinite wraparound, and then we'll hit save. Then we'll go and have a look on the website, and you'll see that now what we have is, yes, we have 5 items, but the items on the edge are equally trimmed. So the center item remains the featured item. And now what would happen is, if in this particular slider you wanted the central item to be a little bit larger than the rest, you'll see that we have to do that in a slightly different way because of the number of items. So if I go to the cells, and in the normal way I would go to previous and next cells, and I change the previous scale, made that a bit smaller, and also the next scale. Let's make them both the same, so 0.7. And I apply that parameter. Let's save that. And what you'll see on the front end here is that it's only the previous and next cell that is smaller. So you get this effect in your slider, which can be a little bit confusing because now there's just too much going on. So what we can do there is we can head over to the slider this time, and we don't scale the previous and next, but what we do is we do scale the item that we would like to focus on. So that would mean that we head back here and we go to the selected cells and we change the scale value there, and let's make that 1.2. Save. And now when we scroll, you'll see that the central item is slightly larger, but it has this unfortunate effect in that you can't see it because of the slider height. And we'd like to make that slider a little bit higher. So in order to do that, we can head over to the actual slider carousel, and in the overflow we're going to make that visible and save. And now when that item displays larger, you'll see that it is slightly larger. But you'll see now that we have the other side effect happening here, and that then means that because the overflow is no longer hidden, you can see all the other items within the carousel. Now, in order to address that, what we can do there is with a couple of ways. The one way that we can do that is we can select that carousel, carousel builder, and then what I'm going to do is wrap that in a div. So we've wrapped that with a div, and we'll set the width of the div to 100%, and we'll hit save. Then we'll have a look at that on the front end now. And you'll see that the same effects still apply. So in order to just ensure that that div hides the overflow, we can then head over to advanced. We go to layout. And now what we'll do is we'll go to the overflow of that div, and we'll set that div to hidden. Save. And now when you look at it on the front end, you'll see that our slider now is within that space. And it is large enough to see. If you're still not happy with the way that it displays, then what we can do is go into that div, size and spacing, and let's add some padding. Save. Head back to our slider, and now you'll see that it displays more information. So now the sale badge is almost visible. What we can then do is just make that a little bit bigger. So then we create the illusion that it's larger. The other thing that we might want to do in a case like that then is make the previous and next items slightly transparent. So we'll set the opacity then in the individual cells. We'll go to previous cell and the next cell. And what we'll do is we'll change the opacity there. We can make that 0.4, and we'll make that opacity 0.4 as well. Save. And now you'll see that as the products roll on through, that the opacity on those just makes that stand out a little bit more. It's a little bit tricky when you have more than just the standard 3 items. And the dots are also a little bit annoying in that case. So what we can do then is just head over to the page dots and the dot styles or dots and select disable. And then the dots are no longer visible. So now when we look at our carousel, you'll see that the item is bigger and the dots are no longer getting in the way. We can enhance that a little bit more, and what we can do is head on back to the cells and we can go selected cells, and if we want to, we can change the background color just to highlight that one a little bit more. So now if we have a look at our particular item, you'll see now that it has a different color background. Of course, maybe not the right background in this case, but then as the cells rotate, it will then just highlight that item. And of course, you still have the functionality on the individual items, not just on the item in focus, but it just makes that one stand out a little bit more. And what we can do then is on selected cells, make that just a little bit bigger than the rest. And now when it scrolls through, let's just save that again, refresh that again. And you'll see that as it scrolls through now, it fits nicely and it's just a little bit bigger than the item next door to it. So that's one way of just creating a bit of interest in a solid lineup. The other thing that you can do inside your carousel is you can group items together. So if we wanted to group some of the products together, we could in our cells or in our carousel is we could number of cells grouped together, and this will then affect the number of dots that are visible. So instead of showing one dot per product, what it now does is it shows you the dot per group of 3. So if we refresh that, you'll see now that there are 3 items in the selection instead of the 1. All 3 have the slightly enlarged parameter applied, and as we scroll through, you will see now that it moves 3 items at a time. So you'll see it'll start off with that Woo single now, and the carousel will move until it gets to the end, which is 2, and then it'll be back to 3. So in this case, you can then highlight 3 items at a time, showing a little bit of the items to the left and right. So just highlighting those particular items. If you wanted to and you didn't want to enlarge those 3 together, then of course in the cells and under selected cells, we could restore that to the standard size. We refresh, and now when those particular items come through, you'll see that those 3 items are highlighted. And that's pretty much how you can just add a slightly different effect to the products inside your carousel, just to create a bit more interest. Another option that you have if you want to create some interest is to also look at rotating a particular item. So in the selected cell, what you can also look at doing is we might want to just give it a slight rotation. So when we refresh now, you'll see that there is a slight rotation of the objects. So that can be a little bit confusing. So I'm not sure that you would use that on a regular basis, but there may be an occasion where you'd like to do that. Maybe even less than that, just to create some interest. Right, so a better way to apply that would be now to go to your previous and next cells, and let's rotate. We can rotate that in one direction, and we'll rotate that one in the other direction. Save. And now you'll see that the previous, in this case the 2 side objects, are rotated and the inner are straight up. So there we could go to -20, change that to 20. And now you'll see that as it scrolls, you'll just have a kind of a more interesting effect then as the items are scrolled through with the rotation. So it gives you the impression that they are rotating into view and then rotating out. That's just some other things that you can do to make it more interesting. Let's have a look at the mobile friendliness of what we've been up to. Let's do the next one. If we then inspect it, we're also going to take the page dots away here. We'll see that page dots, the carousels all fit differently. So the first one we can see, which was the repeater, is it's not fitting really nicely on mobile. The next item is fitting fine. A bit of a cut off at the bottom there. This one not working very nicely at all. The single item with the fade does fit. And then the other one that we created is also not fitting so nicely. So to correct all the mobile issues, very easy. Head over to our mobile view. So let's go to that breakpoint first. And what I'm going to do now in the standard repeater, our carousel builder, go to cells and just select one. And that will sort that out. And then just go back here and I'm going to remove the... So the sizing that you apply can be done using the actual repeater. So if I scroll down now and I go to the carousel builder, and I don't have to go anywhere else, head over to the carousel builder and I'm going to change the number of cells to 1. There we have 1 cell appearing. Scroll down, go to the last one, and in that carousel builder I'm also going to change the number of cells visible. Right, and I'm going to change that to 1. Just waiting for the computer to catch up here. Apply parameters. And that's 1 now. Remember the last one we had set in groups of 3. So let's just have a look and see how that pans out. So here we have applied that. We've reset the page. We're reloading. This looks like... and now page dots. We'll inspect and refresh. So starting at the top, there we have the repeater, but now we have far too many dots. So what I'm going to do then, and the dots will be penalized in mobile view because they are too small to click on. So I'm going to go over to my carousel builder and we're going to go to page dots and we're going to disable those. We can hide the dots below. That's perhaps a better way of doing it. So let's go to the page dots. We'll enable, but we'll hide below. Scroll down. And here as well, we will go to the carousel builder, page dots, disable below, save. And now when we have a look on the front end, you'll see that the dots are no more. So there they're gone. So that fits very nicely now. Scroll down, we have that one on its own. Then we had the image that enlarges. So there you can see how it comes through and is slightly enlarged. Nice effect on mobile. This was the fade out image. And then the final one is the one there we highlighted the item in focus. And because it now moves in groups of 3, we need to change that for the mobile view. So what we do now is we head back to the cells and the number of cells selected is 1 and the group of cells in the carousel no grouping, save, and when we refresh you will see now that as we move from cell to, should just be displaying the single. So number of grouped together. Let's change that to so when we reload that, now it's one item at a time, and you'll see how it kind of rolls into the picture. So a kind of interesting effect, which can be quite interesting then on a mobile platform. And here we have the fading, fades out, new item fades in. Here we had the from smaller to larger and then to smaller as it fades out. That is the standard scroll. And this was the one with the repeater. It was just a standard scroll. Right, so that's how easy it is to get everything set up to work nicely on the mobile platform. And just another tip is that what you'll find is that when you look at it in the mobile view and it loads, what you might find is that the item there, you'll see it fills up the whole screen, and then as it loads, it then comes back to the correct size, and Google will penalize you that because of the shift in the content. So in order to eliminate that, the best way to do that is to wrap the item with a div, and then we can set that width to 100%. And then what we do is we go to our layout and we say on our mobile device, we can then say overflow hidden, apply that. So now when we look at the content shift, it will be less. You'll see there that the content only displays within the div and not outside the div. So the page doesn't expand and contract. Something which I picked up on the carousel with the new layout content shift measurement by Google. So great. Well, I hope you found that interesting and got some ideas on what to do with your sliders using products. Thank you for watching.